I woke up tied to a chair, and the 6-year-old I babysit was waiting for me in a tuxedo. The first thing I tasted when I woke up was blood. Not a lot, just a coppery tang on my tongue, mixed with the chemical bite of chlorine. My whole body ached, a deep, bruised soreness like I'd been thrown down a flight of stairs. For a second, I couldn't remember why. Then it came back in a sickening rush. The kid, the pool, the water turning the color of rust. I was lying face down on the guest bed, still in my damn clothes. They clung to my skin like a cold, wet shroud. Outside, the world was gray. Rain hammered against the window panes, thick, oily drops that slid down the glass and distorted the already bleak view of the forest. The air in the room was cold, but a smell was creeping under the door. Something rich and impossible. Bacon. Coffee. Waffles. My stomach growled, a traitorous, hungry sound in the heavy silence. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest. Every part of me wanted to stay in that bed, pull the covers over my head, and pretend none of this was real. But the smell was a hook, pulling me out of the room and down the long, cavernous hallway. He was in the kitchen, of course. Lazarus. He stood on a step stool, wearing a chef's hat that was comically large on his small head and a pristine white apron. Flour dusted his pale cheeks and the tips of his dark, serious hair. He looked up as I entered, and his eyes, those unnervingly ancient eyes, lit with a flicker of something that might have been joy. On the massive marble island sat 2 plates. They didn't just look good, they were perfect. Fluffy scrambled eggs, thick-cut bacon woven into a perfect lattice, and golden brown waffles topped with a single, immaculate raspberry. It was the kind of breakfast you see in magazines, the kind no real person, let alone a 6-year-old, could ever actually make. "Good morning, Calla," he said, his voice as clear and crisp as a winter morning. "Jesus, kid, what is all this?" My own voice was a rough croak. "How did you even—" I trailed off. What was the point in asking? I knew I wouldn't get a real answer. He just smiled, a small, knowing little curve of his lips. He hopped down from the stool, and for a split second, as he passed behind a steel support column, he vanished from sight. When he reappeared on the other side, the hat and apron were gone. He was dressed in a miniature 3-piece suit, the kind you see on a child model for some absurdly expensive brand. He pulled a chair up from the table for me, his movements fluid and precise, like a tiny, well-dressed butler. I sank into the chair, the smell from the plate in front of me making my head swim. I picked up a fork. "So, you paint, you cook. You have any other normal kid hobbies I should know about?" He didn't answer. Instead, he made a theatrical gesture, a flick of his wrist like a stage magician. Something small and gray shot from his sleeve and landed on the table between our plates. It was a mouse. It lay on its side, its chest heaving with tiny, terrified breaths. Before I could even scream, he placed his palm flat on top of it. I heard a faint, wet crunch. I recoiled, my chair scraping against the floor. "What the fuck, Lazarus?" He lifted his hand. The mouse was gone. In its place sat a small, delicate ring, milky white and intricately carved. It looked like it was made of bone. He picked it up between his thumb and forefinger and held it out to me. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The command was in his eyes, a silent, unblinking demand that was more terrifying than any shout. "Be mine." The air went out of my lungs. "No," I whispered. My voice shook. "No, I'm not. We're not doing this." His expression didn't change, but the pressure in the room intensified. He looked from the ring to my face, then back again. I pushed my chair back, scraping it loudly across the floor, and stood up. "No, you little creep. Absolutely not." He lunged. It wasn't a child's clumsy rush. He moved like a predator, impossibly fast, and was on me before I could react. His small hands grabbed the front of my shirt, and his face, lips puckered, came toward mine. It wasn't a kiss, lips puckered, came toward mine. It was an attempt to consume, to mark. I yelled and shoved him, throwing him with all my strength. He flew across the kitchen and hit the cabinets with a sickening thud. He was on his feet in an instant, not a tear in his eye, not even a wince of pain. He charged again. This time, I was ready. I put a hand on his forehead, holding him at arm's length as his little legs churned furiously. "Listen to me, you psycho," I panted, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I don't know what kind of game this is, but it's over." He clawed at my wrist, his tiny fingernails surprisingly sharp. I yelped and let go. He stumbled, caught his balance, and just stood there dusting off his perfect little suit. He crossed his arms and huffed, a parody of a petulant child. "It doesn't matter," he said, his voice suddenly sulky. "They have your mark now. You're already chosen." I stared at him, my mind struggling to process the words. "My mark? What the hell are you talking about?" "And that's the most you've said all week." I knew I was a good influence, I just knew... Wait, what did you say about your parents? A giggle escaped his lips. He rocked back and forth on his heels, a picture of innocence. "I don't know. Don't you... I don't know me. You just said they have my mark." "What does that mean?" The light in his eyes vanished. His face went slack, his jaw hanging slightly open. The playful child was gone, replaced by an empty vessel. "Lazarus? Hey, snap out of it." I waved a hand in front of his face. Nothing. His head turned toward me, a slow, grinding movement that made the hairs on my neck stand up. He opened his mouth to speak, but the voice that came out wasn't his. It was a voice that belonged in a cathedral or a tomb. Deep, resonant, and impossibly old, it filled the entire house, seeming to come from the very walls around me. "Kala." I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. "Oh, you have got to be fucking kidding me." The voice was inside my head, echoing in the kitchen, vibrating through the floorboards. Lazarus's mouth hung open, a silent portal for this monstrous sound. "You will be a bride for my son. You will give him an anchor in this world. You will love him. You will serve him. You will be his queen." The words weren't a request. They were scripture. They were scripture. They were fact. The worst part was that some deep primal part of me, some terrified animal instinct, wanted to kneel. I shook my head, trying to clear it. Who is this?" I asked the empty air. "This is your father," the voice boomed. And I could feel Lazarus's vacant eyes on me. "This is your destiny. Did you truly believe we would pay you such a sum for simple childcare? For a week of swimming in our pool and sleeping in our beds? This is your betrothal girl. This week is your final trial." My brain felt like it was melting, trying to find a rational explanation where there was none. A trial? For what? Why would I marry a 6-year-old? And why are you talking like he's, I don't know, the goddamn Antichrist? A heavy silence fell over the room. The rain beat against the windows. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. Then, the voice again, laced with the terrifying, ancient amusement. "Honestly, Kala, what did you think was happening here?" "I don't know. I thought you were just weird, rich assholes." The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. Another silence. "So," the voice continued, slow and deliberate, "you saw the drawings in his room. You met the women at the gate. You found you could not leave the grounds. You watched the water of the baptismal font turn to blood, and your conclusion was eccentric wealth? The pool. That really happened?" My voice was a tiny whisper. "I thought I hit my head. I thought I was hallucinating. You tried to flee before that. I fall a lot. My mom dropped me as a baby. The lie was so pathetic it sounded insane even to my own ears." Another long, damning silence. "We are always watching, Kala," the voice said, its tone shifting, becoming a final, chilling command. "We love our son. See that you do too. The union will be finalized soon." Lazarus's mouth snapped shut. He blinked, and he was a little boy again. He looked up at me and smirked. "Told you. You didn't tell me shit about the blood," I shot back, my terror hardening into anger. He just sighed, a long, suffering sound, and pointed a dramatic finger toward the massive glass doors that led to the patio. I stared at him, my mind racing, before the pieces clicked together with an audible snap in my head. The pool. I stumbled past him, tripping over the goddamn bone ring on the floor, and wrenched the sliding door open. I stepped out into the rain. The pool was empty. Not a drop of water. The concrete basin was bone dry and stained a faint, rusty brown. I turned and ran back inside, slamming the door behind me. I dropped to my knees in front of Lazarus. "Okay." Listen to my knees in front of Lazarus. "Okay. I've tried so hard to be patient. I've tried to be nice. But this ends now. You do not want me. I am a mess. I have commitment issues. I leave wet towels on the bed. I am a terrible choice for whatever this is." He just leaned forward, his eyes wide and unblinking, and tried to kiss me again. I shoved him away and scrambled to my feet. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Then I remembered something his real father, Alistair, had said on that first night. Something about the library being off limits. There had to be a reason. It was the first place I ran. The heavy oak doors were locked. I threw my shoulder against one, then again. On the third try, The lock splintered and the door flew open. The room was silent and cold. Bookshelves stretched to the ceiling, filled with ancient, leather-bound volumes. And against the far wall was the thing he called a fish tank. It wasn't a fish tank. It was a massive, seamless slab of polished black obsidian, like a dark mirror. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just started pulling books from the shelves, frantic, throwing them to the floor. As I did, a strange humming started, low and deep. It wasn't a sound so much as a feeling, a vibration that resonated in my bones. It was coming from my pocket, my phone. I pulled it out. The screen was black, but it was vibrating so violently, it felt hot, burning my hand. The humming grew louder, more intense, filling the room. It wasn't just the phone, it was the obsidian mirror. It was vibrating in sympathy. In a fit of panic and rage, I hurled the phone across the room. It hit the obsidian slab with a crack, but the mirror didn't shatter. The phone did. The slab went dead silent. The humming stopped. I fucking knew it, I hissed to the empty room. It was a goddamn camera. Then my own reflection in the mirror moved. Then my own reflection in the mirror moved. Something behind me. A shadow detached itself from the corner of the room. Then another. Hooded figures in dark, woolen robes. They moved without a sound. Before I could scream, a heavy cloth bag was thrown over my head, plunging me into suffocating darkness. I felt a sharp, cold prick in my neck. My legs gave out, and my last thought as I fell into someone's arms was that the world smelled like old books and dust. I woke up tied to a chair. Lazarus stood before me, dressed in that same tiny tuxedo. He looked like a porcelain doll. At his side stood two towering hooded figures. The one on the right spoke, and I recognized the voice that had filled the house, the voice that had come from Lazarus's mouth. "Welcome to the family, Kella." The other figure, a woman, laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "I'm so pleased you decided to accept our proposal, dear." They pulled back their hoods, and I'd finally understood. It wasn't about wealth. It wasn't about wealth. Eccentricity. They weren't just people. Their faces were too long, their skin too pale, their eyes black pits that held no light. They were something ancient, something wrong. Alistair and Morwenna Sterling smiled down at me, their teeth just a little too sharp. "The ceremony can now begin," Alistair said, his voice no longer a disembodied boom, but a calm, chilling whisper that promised an eternity of horrors.